Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on just some DC news. And as we head into the final week of February for 2025, going very quickly already this year, this of course brings us closer to the real start of this new DC universe, of course that being Superman, but with Supergirl Lands currently filming, Superman on its way, as well as Peacemaker Season 2 shortly afterwards. Things are coming along fairly decently. There's still been some bumps in the road, of course, and there'll be one that we talk about in this video as well. But some of that, some of those bumps are just from this journey in the new DCU, but also some stuff from the runoff from previous years or prior years. But in this video, we have some news and information for upcoming projects to talk about that are interesting. So yeah, we'll do that. The first thing to bring up is that there was a reported private press event at, I guess, Burbank, the Warner Brothers Studios, just around the DC Studios brand and its projects. Apparently there's going to be more news on this on Monday or early in the week, maybe Tuesday or something like that, most likely. Some were making it out to maybe be something bigger than it was, but we'll probably find out soon what was going on there. I'm not going to really put too much thought onto it in the moment because when you try and people think, oh my god, they're announcing the next 10 movies. It's well, probably not. So people try and think a bit too big. The only thing that was really suggested was that the topic of Batman as a whole in live action in DC was a point of discussion. So that might be around the logistics of Robert Pattinson's Batman and what's happening there and the effect on the Brave and the Bold. That might be a thing that was brought up, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess, in regards to Monday or Tuesday. But of course, throughout the video, let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts and everything we go over. Always curious to hear what you guys are thinking. If you enjoy the video, drop a like, takes 2 seconds. So the first thing to go over is Clayface, this movie that we're set to, it was randomly greenlit at the end of last year, sort of was rumored that it was happening. A lot of people thought it was going to be happening as a part of the Matt Reeves Batman universe, but that's not the case. It's in the DCU apparently, and it's found its director. It's been a big toss-up because we know that Mike Flanagan wrote the script, but he's not directing, he's busy. So they had to find a new director, and they found one in the form of James Watkins, and this is an exclusive from the Hollywood Reporter, and this is what they had to say. DC Studios has finally found a director to mold Clayface. After several months of searching, Speak No Eva Helmer, James Watkins has been chosen to direct the feature based on the Batman villain, which has a script from horror maestro Mike Flanagan. Sources say that DC co-chief James Gunn met with Watkins on Thursday for a final presentation that led to the nod of nabbing the gig. A deal will now be hammered out. Sources say the film is budgeted at $40 million and is a Hollywood horror tale centering on a B-movie actor who injects himself with a substance to keep himself relevant, only to find out that he can reshape his face and form, becoming a walking piece of clay. The movie is due to shoot later this year and is meant to show the breadth of DC material, from big budget superhero affairs such as a Superman on one side of the spectrum to lesser known characters and projects that are more modestly budgeted. So yeah, we've heard all that stuff in regards to the general, plot of the film, in regards to what's going on with Clayface, where he starts, where it goes, why it's happening, and then also the budget around it. I mean, this is you'd have to think this is a pretty decent alley-oop slam dunk for DC. The movie would have to be awful, I think, for there to be any worries in regards to not making money off this. And I think if this works, which it should, but maybe in regards to also maybe the critical response, hey, we like this, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes or higher, I think you'll see more of this. And look, not many people know who James Watkins is. I think those people putting out too bigger names in regards to the person that would direct this film. But I think if you can get a good, plant or a good foundation with some of these films, a good writer or even a decent producer that comes in, or just a person that might be involved, these seem like the ones that I could see DC maybe even relying on to hit some green or good news when it comes to the studio. It's not going to make up for if you have a big bomb, obviously, but it's a lot of decent pieces of good news can make up for one piece of bad news. So I think it's a decent run or a decent idea, and it'll just be interesting to see how it goes along this run and what it leads to going forward. The next thing to talk about is that James Gunn and David Corenswet will appear as a variant cover. So not the main cover, just need to stress that a variant cover on Superman Unlimited #1 by Dan Mora. And this issue comes out in May, about 2 months or a month and a half before Superman hits theaters. You can see it right here. It's obviously got David Corenswet Superman on the right. I think a lot of these variants had that the David Corenswet style Superman, just in obviously that art. But this one has specifically James Gunn there on the left with a laptop, I think specifically a MacBook, with all those stickers on it, and of course wearing a DC Studios shirt. And look, this has started another thing of people discussing it, but we've talked about this before. It seemed very early on, if not from the outset, from when he was given the job or made co-chief alongside Peter Safran, that James Gunn was going to be a part of that branding of DC Studios. Now, will it work? We don't know. We don't know. There's no evidence, and there's no real like decent suggestion at this point as to whether it's going to work or whether it is working. That's for 2 or 3 years down the line. Is James Gunn on the same level as a Feige? Do people reference Gunn constantly when it comes to the DC stuff? Do they go, oh, what's Gunn doing? They don't say what is DC doing? They're like, what is Gunn doing? Like at the moment, like if someone doesn't like a Marvel movie, they're like, what was Kevin Feige thinking? So that's going to be the interesting thing in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how long it takes for DC to really push itself up as this connected universe, to see whether that pushing of James Gunn works. But, I think it's harmless at the same time, because it's not heavy-handed. He's not in the Superman trailer. It's just his name. But then, he's made enough of those films that have got, the Guardians movies and stuff like that. Obviously, a lot of people didn't see the Suicide Squad, but it was very critically liked. It's got a high score on the critic sites and stuff like that. So, to me, they're very small. I know the Creature Commanders thing rubbed people the wrong way, but once again, that's a small project. I don't think you're going to see Gunn as a character in Superman. I don't think you're going to see him as a character in Supergirl. I don't think you're going to see a lantern in the Green Lantern Corps from the planet Hames called Gaana or something like that. You're not going to see that stuff. I think it's small things like this. It's just whether, it works in regards to that public branding stuff. It'll be interesting. But yeah, it is random. I must say it is random, but I think it's harmless at the same time. I think I've seen people getting too angry about something that is, at the end of the day, pretty damn harmless. And the second thing the second last thing to go over, speaking of James Gunn, is of course we know James Gunn took over and is now, starting this new DC Universe reboot. And of course the prior DCEU was started with Zack Snyder, and we know that James Gunn got his first real big sort of first script in Hollywood through Dawn of the Dead, which of course was the first film that was directed by Zack Snyder. So they'd sort of worked together. Now it's one of those things where I think Gunn had written the script for that Dawn of the Dead movie, and then Zack Snyder came on board. I don't think it was they worked in tandem creating that thing, so they were separate sort of, but they're also coming up at the same time as directors in that point in Hollywood, like that early 2000s and stuff like that. So there was obviously, a bit of a crossroads there. But we can see that Gunn and Snyder here met up again. This was put on James Gunn's Instagram. Now, funnily enough, this was reported that this was on the same day that Gunn met with that James Watkins, where they inked the deal, or sort of handshake agreement for him to direct Clayface. So this has even started more speculation on, well, does this mean that Snyder might be involved in something? And it might be Gunn just brought Snyder in just to have a discussion about, his thoughts on if there's anything he wanted to do. Now, Snyder's had a rough time in regards to the creative process, because I watched the Rebel Moon. I thought they were arse. I've heard that animated Twilight of the Gods show was actually pretty well done. So it's very interesting to see that he maybe if there's if he, with the Rebel Moon stuff, it was a full creation of his own thing, though it was really just sort of rip off Star Wars, and it wasn't really that great. But then there's things with the Norse gods and everything where people enjoyed it. So I don't know. I'm just trying to think if Gunn brought Snyder in to direct something, what type of environment does that create? Now, of course, it's mainly for the chronically online side of things, where there's going to be discourse, in regards to outside of that, which is going to be the majority of your audience, 80 to 85%. They probably don't either care about that conflict or just care at all who's directing a movie, to be completely honest. But it would be interesting to see if Gunn had brought Snyder in for a legitimate discussion, is there anything you'd want to do? And it wouldn't surprise me if Gunn is open to the idea of Snyder doing something else. Well, it's not in regards to his Snyder Cut. I don't think that's going to be a thing. At least I don't think so. But something else worlds that might vibe with Zack Snyder's style and get a prop. One of the biggest issues around Snyder's movies a lot of the time is the storytelling and the writing and stuff like that. I think he visually and stuff, he's obviously pretty talented, but it's the finer things when it comes to the writing and the story, and trying maybe to do too much there. So maybe if there was a similar situation to what we see with Clayface, where you have Mike Flanagan writing it and then another director, maybe Zack Snyder is the director, and they bring on a script that a top tier screenwriter does, but it just fits Zack Snyder's style. I think that would be very interesting. And it could also be a bit of a reconciliation to an extent. It'd be very interesting to see. Now, I think the room they're in is that same room where they had that that DC architect sort of, it's the DC Studios meeting discussion room sort of thing. That's what it looks like at the very least. But it'll be interesting to see if anything comes from this, or if it was a harmless, just Zack Snyder just having a walk around the offices and stuff like that, which does happen a lot of the time as well. And the final thing to talk about is Sergeant Rock, which, you know, speaking of these like smaller movies, is another movie that's set to be happening. But one thing that we had heard is that that Luca Guadagnino was going to be directing it, but also that Daniel Craig was looking to be starring in the film as Sergeant Rock. But apparently that's not happening. And this is coming from Variety. I don't think they got the exclusive. I think it was someone else, but Variety put a bit more information here that's worth discussing. So they said Daniel Craig isn't enlisting in the DC universe after all. The actor has dropped out of consideration for the title role in Sergeant Rock, the DC Comics adaptation from Craig's queer director Luca Guadagnino and screenwriter Justin Kuritsky's. News of Craig's possible involvement first broke in November, but a source with knowledge of the project notes that the actor has never formally committed to making it. A rep for DC Studios declined to comment, and from some other places it said that he had a scheduling issue. And also one of the other things that came up is that apparently Jeremy Allen White is one of the people that's looked at to fill into this role now, Sergeant Rock, which is different because it means you're changing the age of the character as well. You're going from someone of Daniel Craig's age to someone of Jeremy Allen White's age, which I think is a big difference. So I like in regards to like maybe like how they act, they're experienced as, you know, a person in the military as well. So that seemed like a bit of a jump. So I don't know if that's true at all, but maybe it is flexible in regards to the age of the character. I'm not too sure. But I think this is clearly the test one in this DCU at the moment from the projects we have in regards to like the Oscar stuff, like selling like a Oscar nominated director, actors, and, you know, everything like that. This is like the testing ground for that. It doesn't necessarily mean you're making the movie to try and win an Oscar, but it's about recruiting that talent to come in, which can then eventually lead down the road to that. Because I'm sure Gunn is in the back of his head thinking, we need a movie like Joker that comes in and can be that Oscar contender just because it's a bit different, but still fits into that DC, you know, sandbox. Not necessarily the main DC universe. This one is. This is meant to be in the DCU, but it could be an Elseworlds film and stuff like that. So yeah, watch this space in regards to that, I guess. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it, show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your various opinions and everything we went over. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.